Hello, everyone. Can you hear my voice? Caroline, can I get a confirmation that you can hear me?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Salam, marhaba. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. This is Khawla Al-Muhannadi, President of the Environment Friends Society, who's hosting this event, and the Ambassador of NGO Stakeholder of the ISO 26000 SGN, the Stakeholder Global Network, who's organizing this discussion. The Global NGO Dialogue, Impacts of the Pandemic on Vulnerable Groups, People and Other Living Beings in Our Shared Environment. This event is organized to understand NGO view about what's happening to people, communities, and other living beings during this strange and difficult time the world is facing. The news have kept us informed about the official, the WHO, some big corporations' views and news related to the pandemic. What we feel as individuals concerned about social responsibility principles, ethics, subjects, and values, and as NGOs, the conscious of the world in particular, that's what we need to discover. We need to hear the voices of the vulnerable groups, those who are often not heard. And in crises like this, they're more likely to be pushed aside as they were never the priority for anyone. My colleague from ISO 26000, decade of NGO work, and the co-facilitator of this dialogue will tell you more about the vulnerable groups, but I wanted to share some facts with you to set the introduction of the dialogue. But before that, I would like to draw your kind attention to our program. It includes the panel discussion, as you know, followed by open discussion where all of you can cast your questions and comments either by use of microphone or by text in the text. The chat is open all the time. You can communicate in English, hopefully, but if your communication language is Arabic or French, then Lubna and Saliha are here and they will kindly just read what you wrote in Arabic or French and translate it to English so we know your question or your comment. If someone can volunteer for other language translations, then please just do so. We don't want to have a language barrier in here, so we're doing our best with our possibilities. We would like to survey your view about 4 questions. Our young ambassador, Marie Hilolu, will share links in the chat and with questions, and at the end, she will tell us the result. So you will have her soon, and she will tell you about that. All panelists are asked kindly to raise hands, so we're able to see you. So the amazing organizers here with us today, Dr. Lubna, Miss Dina, Miss Hanouf can see you and they're able to help you at any stage. So please, all panelists, use the raise hand. So these are just overall comments. The facts I wanted to share with you is something that I read recently, and I just felt that I was really touched by it. And with all my knowledge in social responsibility, I never thought of it this way. Did you know that 5.1 billion people lack meaningful access to justice? That's 5.1 billion people. 253 million people living in extreme conditions of injustice. We have one of them with us today, at least one of them. The most vulnerable populations find it the hardest to access justice, which increase the risk they will continue to be left behind. Worryingly, around the world, the conditions of civil rights have been increasingly restricted. 12 consecutive years of decline in global freedom. So we're not doing any good. With 71 countries suffering complete decline in political rights and liberties. With this, I have set the introduction of this dialogue. We're looking forward to hear our panelists, and we're looking forward to every detail of this dialogue. So, Caroline, I hand it to you.
Sorry about that. Greetings and welcome to all. I am very glad to be with you today to give a framework of how ISO 26000, the global guidance standard on social responsibility, can be useful to NGOs. For me, ISO 26000 starts with the 7 core subjects. Everyone should pay attention to all of these. For us today, I'll highlight human rights and the environment. Vulnerable groups of people are defined as those who have suffered persistent discrimination, leading to entrenched disadvantages. They should get additional attention in terms of protection and respect. You see the range of examples of vulnerable groups. We should each act to protect and respect the specific vulnerable groups in our own communities. Turning to the environment, the most obvious vulnerable groups are the endangered species and their habitats. ISO 26000 stresses the survival of terrestrial and aquatic species, genetic diversity, and natural ecosystems. Obviously, these are all interconnected. Now we get to the hard questions. Most of us have identified vulnerable groups in our own contexts that we work with and work for. But how exactly do we go about protecting them? Especially when much business as usual involves making money through exploiting vulnerable people, for example, low-wage workers, and vulnerable species, for example, habitat destruction by mining industries. How do you get the leverage, the starting point, the influence to advocate for change to help these vulnerable groups? ISO 26000 really does give us a lever: stakeholder involvement. Stakeholders are those who are affected by or can affect a business or other organization. Credible groups seeking to protect such interests. In other words, NGOs like us can represent stakeholders who don't have voices or access on their own. Here are some global trends today connected to the model of stakeholder engagement to ensure that the voices of the vulnerable groups are heard. Build Back Better after COVID-19. In the United States, the idea of Build Back Better has empowered advocates for improving our public sector services, including healthcare, so they do a better job for the people most at risk. The inequalities revealed by the impact of the pandemic are now so obvious that there's more public and political will to improve these services. For our non-human relatives and the habitats they depend on, one growing global trend is the movement for legal rights of nature, giving legal protections to beings in the natural world, similar in spirit to the legal status of corporations. So, for example, a river can go to court, represented by human advocates, to argue for its right to flow and be healthy. Polluters should pay to clean it up. In conclusion, ISO 26000 has moral strength from its position as a global consensus document from ISO, which has strong name recognition in business communities around the world. Stakeholder involvement is becoming a more widespread expectation throughout the world. NGOs and other spokespeople have the backing of ISO 26000 to speak and act in support of vulnerable groups. This is not any guarantee of success for any of us, but it does give us a pathway for action and global consensus support from the social responsibility movement, including, obviously, the people who are gathered here today. Shukran jazilan. Thank you very much. Back to you, Khawla.
Thank you, Caroline. I think I'm having an echo. Just a second. Thank you, Caroline. Well, I have to manage few stations, so sorry for that. The panel discussion is between NGOs from different parts of the globe. But before we start that, I would like our colleague, the young ambassador, Mary, to take us through how she's going to run the survey. So Mary, please.
Thank you so much, and welcome everyone to today's event. So we're going to hold a poll, in which we're going to use Mentimeter. I'm going to post the link, two links in which we're requesting everyone to participate and vote. And then at the end of the event, we're going to display the responses. So yeah, I have dropped the links right now. And everyone, once you answer the first question, just click next to the next question. Each link has 2 questions. So yeah, I'll be monitoring this and also will be updating everyone via the Zoom chat. Thank you.
Thank you, our young ambassador, Mary from Kenya. So the panel discussion is between NGOs from different parts of the globe. They will be dialoguing about the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on vulnerable groups, including people and the environment, drawing from their own experience and work on the ground. We have 6 panelists. Each will speak for not more than 5 minutes, followed by a question to answer. You can write your question for that specific panelist in the chat. We will read it and we will ask it to that panelist in that 1 minute that she or he has after they finish their presentation. Otherwise, you can just wait until the last session, the discussion session, which is about 30 minutes, and you can ask your question or give your comment at that time. So with that, our colleague Hanouf Al-Amir from Saudi Arabia will manage the panel presentation. So Hanouf, I'm handing it to you.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon for all. My name is Hanouf Al-Amir. I am the CEO for the Friends of Environment in Saudi Arabia. Hello for all. I will be the technical support. Now, the first presenter is Rafiel. Are you here, Dr. Rafiel? Are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Good.
I am
Okay.
here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. Okay, the presentation, you can start now.
Okay, thank you so very much. Like you heard, my name is Rafael Obonyo. I'm the convener of the Youth Congress. and I'm going to present on the impact of COVID-19 on vulnerable groups. Specifically, I'll be looking at youth and youth in the informal settlements. And here, we are basically looking at youth as a vulnerable group. There's still discussion on whether, and I'm sure many people are still wondering if youth is a vulnerable group, but extreme poverty and lack of social support and other enablers like economic opportunities does make youth a vulnerable group in the sense that it exposes youth to, abuse, indignity, and other challenges. And so that's why youth is a vulnerable group. And COVID-19 has indeed had deep and disproportionate impact on young people, and most specifically on young people who live in the informal settlements, or if you like, low-income areas, or if you like, they called slums, or if you like, informal places in spaces in the urban centers. The second slide is on the Youth Congress. This is the NGO that I represent. It's a youth serving organization, in Kenya, and it seeks to promote youth leadership and participation. Looks at how youth can be engaged in decision making and how youth can be involved in development. And we've been involved a lot in different interventions to support youth and to support communities. We all know that COVID-19 has affected people differently and continents differently. Of course, COVID-19 cases in Africa have not been as many, but there's been huge social and economic impact, negative impact on people and environment in Africa. For example, many economic growth has been affected, and it's all, in some cases it's predicted, it's estimated that it's going to fall by about 1.4% in GDP, and depending on the size of the economy, of course, smaller economies would be affected more. But I want to move to the impact of COVID-19 on youth and how COVID-19 has impacted on youth. Two quick references. One is on International Labour Organization has done a survey on the impact of COVID-19 on youth, and it's an important report that I think we should all look at, and it's brought out that COVID-19 has had huge impact on jobs, livelihoods, education rights, and well-being of young people. The other reference I would want to make is on the Youth Congress. The Youth Congress, like I said, is a youth serving organization in Kenya, works a lot with youth in urban centers, in the informal settlements or low-income areas. Also did a mapping of youth entrepreneurs, but also youth in the informal settlements, and looking at the impact of COVID-19 on youth livelihoods. And again, it brought out that youth have been extremely and hugely impacted on by COVID-19. Let me point out a few ways in which youth have been impacted. One is on youth and jobs. COVID-19 did affect the informal sector, and 80% of youth in Africa, working youth population in Africa, are actually in the informal sector. And that means that if COVID-19 hit informal sector the hardest, it means that youth were hugely affected. So many young people lost their jobs, lost their sources of livelihoods. The other one is on financial hardships. Many young people are not able to cater for their basic, to cater for their basic needs, whether we're talking about food, shelter, and housing, because their source of income has been hugely affected. The other bit is on the stress and anxiety. Many young people have been affected in a way that because of the lockdowns, because of certain challenges and limitations, many young people find themselves in situations of stress, anxiety, and sadness. The other one is on digital inclusion in terms of education. Many young people do not have, many families, especially in the informal sector, informal settlements, do not have access to technology. And
Raphael, are you still there?
Dr. Raphael?
hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I hear
We
you
hear you
now.
now. Yeah, we hear you.
Can you finish?
Caroline?
We can hear you. Can you finish up your presentation now?
Yeah,
Take
I'm
about-
here. I think
wrap it
I got disconnected.
Yeah, but now you're back.
Okay, I was talking. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I was just talking about the yeah, thank you so much. I was just talking about the short-term nature of the government interventions, that that has not been quite helpful. And then lastly is the issue of access to, the required things that are required to fight the pandemic. For example, soap, sanitizer, water. Many young people in the informal sector, informal settlements, have not been able to access these kind of items. In fact, I remember when one time we were distributing sanitizers and soap. Young people were grateful, but they were also talking about the issue of livelihoods, that yes, we've washed our hands, but what are we going to eat? So it means that COVID-19 has had a huge impact, like I said, on livelihoods, on jobs, on the well-being of young people, on education, and on mental health, and also on array of rights. Things like lockdown and curfews have really affected the youth rights in terms of freedoms, in terms of interactions, in terms of engagement, in terms of high-handedness of some governments. And so young people have experienced a lot of challenges. So thank you so much. And I'm just, in terms of call for action, are not homogeneous. Youth have been affected.
Okay. Raphael, I think we lost you once again. Why don't we switch back to Khawla to introduce the next panelist, and we'll get back to you for the discussion.
Yes, Caroline, I was about to say this. So Hanouf, whenever we have an issue with technicality, let's move to the next speaker, and then we can give everyone 1 minute at the end to catch up with whatever they couldn't say. So Hanouf,
Okay.
to you.
Okay. Just wait, please. Okay. The second presenter is Dr. Noor. You can see now the presentation.
Yes,
we
thank
can
you.
see it. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Okay, so hello everyone. You hear me, right?
Yes.
Thank you very much for this great discussion. I'm Noor from Gaza. I'm a teacher and translator here, and I will be talking about the situation in my city in the Gaza Strip, which is, as you know, part of Palestine, a small wasteland in the south of it. Gaza, as you know, has not been suffering with coronavirus only, but also from the Israeli occupation, from the imposed siege that the Gazans have been living under since more than 10 years. So adding an insult to the injury, so they are fighting more than one enemy at once. In the already deteriorated situation, in the already densely populated area. If we move to the next slide. Yeah, so the Palestinians in Gaza were fighting the Israeli occupation and the COVID-19 pandemic, as you see here in the illustration. The reality raises the questions about the role of these factors in advancing social collapse in Gaza, which the situation is already collapsed, and the impact of the pandemic on vulnerable groups in Gaza. The socio-economic crisis that are amassing as a result of Israel's ongoing closure and the blockade on Gaza have only been made more profound by the coronavirus outbreak. So all of the Gazans, we can consider them as vulnerable groups, but however, there are more groups who are affected more than the others. So there is kind of social injustice here. If we move, we can see some statistics and more of the devastating impacts of the coronavirus that are made worse by the Israeli occupation. So the Israeli regime restricted the import of medical test kits into Palestinian territories. Imagine how these things were mostly needed during the pandemic, but the Palestinians in Gaza were not able to enjoy them, to have these simple rights because of this occupation. So as a result, there was an absence of and shortage of food and non-food items and supplies, especially medical supplies. There was social inequalities that have increased, while the marginalized and disadvantaged in society no longer have rights and were living in limbo. There was also limited access of water that affects hand washing and raises the risk of disease, particularly for children, which is especially dangerous in densely populated areas like Gaza. Like during the coronavirus pandemic, we were hearing a lot, wash your hands and keep social distance, but was this possible in Gaza? It was, most of the families or many families were not able to have access to clean water in order to wash their hands, in order to protect themselves from this virus. So looking at numbers, more than 56% of Gazans were living under poverty before the pandemic, but now it is expected to rise. It is already rising and expected to rise more. And the final statistics say that it has been 64%, while the unemployment rates were 45%. There was lack of food and security, which has become 68%, and 80% of families depend on food aids, the external aids. And also more than 45,000 workers have lost their job during the pandemic, especially the daily workers and the breadwinners who had to stay home and not to go to work, as you know. So simply put, the Palestinians in Gaza are haunted by social misery, violence, and wars every second of their lives. You can see one of the, here's the family living in Gaza. You can see the conditions of their home. Yeah. Can we move to the next slide, please? And the next one, we don't have much time. Here is one of the workers who is a taxi driver reporting how he suffered and his family because of the shortage of water. as I mentioned before, he says that we can no longer store water in the roof because there was no electricity to pump this water. And as a result, they had to spend days without water, which was the most basic and most needed thing at all times, and especially in this pandemic. Okay, so to make the situation worse, in May, Gaza was having an attack from the Israeli airstrikes who targeted one of the very few laboratories in Gaza. Here you can see the Israeli airstrike hit the street and sent shrapnel into the clinic, shattering windows, shredding doors and furniture and computers, and wrecking Gaza's most important, and maybe it could be the only one, the only coronavirus test laboratory in Gaza. Yeah, so as you know, during times of war, people need more treatment than usual. One senior administrator at the clinic said, now we can't give people medicine. Also, during the last aggression in Gaza, now thankfully we have a ceasefire, but in May, people were seeking refuge in the UNRWA schools in Gaza. So imagine everywhere where we hear keep social distance, stay away by 2 meters from each other so that you don't get infected. But the situation in Gaza, imagine this highly and densely populated area, and to add insult to the injury, people were seeking refuge in schools by big numbers. In that situation, it was impossible to keep the social distance. Imagine how many families are kept in only one classroom in order to escape the airstrikes of the Israeli occupation in some areas were highly affected. So finally, here's a call to action. What can we do as individuals and NGOs in order to help this situation? The Palestinian Authority and concerned agencies, which is the NGOs and international bodies, have to mobilize support for residents in the Gaza Strip whose lives are threatened by the unprecedented coronavirus outbreak, and to improve the living conditions in Gaza and support the municipalities here. The international communities also have to exert pressure on Israel by boycotting, etc., in order to immediately and unconditionally lift the blockade, the siege and the closure, and seize all punitive measures. Let's move to the next one, please. Here is a wall in Gaza with one sitting. Okay. The Gaza Electricity Distribution Corporation have to collaborate with the municipalities to ensure water supply that is more regular and sufficient to households, and prioritize the provision of power supply to municipal wells and networks to better equip residents with the amount and the quality of water necessary to fight the COVID-19 outbreak. Of course, this can be possible with the help of the international communities and NGOs. Final call to act. As you know, the majority of Palestinian organizations have adjusted their strategies to cope with the situation, providing the maximum support to the community in this difficult period. However, globally, a rising number of funding opportunities are being given to researchers and entrepreneurs to invest their intellectual abilities and innovation to find solutions and to come up with studies about this pandemic. So you know this now, it's your time to invest your capabilities and to be innovative. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I hope you found it beneficial and learned something about the situation here in Gaza. And hopefully it will be better in Gaza and everywhere else.
Thank you, Noor. We feel sad for what we hear, but again, that's what this dialogue is about. This is what we want to hear. We wanted to hear the real voice of vulnerable people that we hardly hear about them in the news and in the views that has been repeated for us now for more than 2 years about the pandemic. So before we move to the next presenter, I would like to ask Lubna, is there a question in the chat directed to Noor, or shall we ask her our question?
No, there are no questions in the chat for him. So
Okay,
you go
thank
ahead.
you. Thank you very much. So Noor, our question is, what is the one thing that you can say that in this difficult, almost impossible situation where you, as you put it, that you're not facing one enemy, you're facing two enemies. So it's not just the COVID, it's the occupation at the same time. And with all the suffering that comes with it and the attacks to Gaza and the destruction of everything, like you don't have much, but even that not much that you have is getting lost. If I ask you, what is the lesson learned? You are known as the Palestinian nation, as a nation that is able to survive the impossible. So please give us a lesson from there. What have you learned, Noor?
Actually, every time I get amazed of how people of Gaza are able to be resilient and to fight back. They never give up. And there were many real cases and stories of this. We can see how the medics and the nurses, the doctors survived their life and dedicated all of their knowledge and time in order to improve the situation. However, despite all of these problems and the blockade and the siege and the occupation and the airstrikes, etc. However, we see them work day and night to improve the situation. We see them innovate and always invent new things in order to help people in Gaza, especially those who can't have easy access to hospitals and to the other supplies. There are many applications. They use the technology very wisely. So from here in my place, I can use many applications to contact the doctors and the medics to check for my test, for example, or to contact what I need to contact. So yeah, the lesson learned to how these people are resilient and how we have to continue being fighting back and continue being resilient.
So resourcefulness and resilience. Amazing, Noor. Amazing lesson. Carolyn, would you like to ask Noor any question before we move to the next speaker?
I guess the only thing I can think of is what has been the most useful support for you from NGOs in the international community?
Would you please repeat the question again? I kind of didn't hear the
Sure.
first few words.
Sure. What has been the most useful support to you from NGOs in the international community? NGOs in other countries, have they been able to help at all?
Oh yes, actually, we have received many medical supplies from NGOs in Egypt and Turkey and other countries. So thankfully, many families were able to survive because of this aid. Actually, many families are mainly depending on this aid received from the international NGOs and the international communities. So yeah, the more NGOs we have them supporting the Palestinians, the more it helps the situation to be better, the more it helps those people survive during these hard times.
Thank you very much, Noor. Hanouf, we hand it back to you to go to the next speaker. But before we do that, Pedro, would you please show us a map of the countries that are with us today? We just would like to know to what extent we are global today. So Pedro, someone can switch on his microphone. Pedro, are you able to speak? Shall we move to the next speaker and give you a few minutes to get ready? Okay, Hanouf, I turn it to you.
Okay. The first thing, thank you, Dr. Noor, for your presentation. The third speaker is Dr. Hori from Japan.
Hello. Okay. This is Hori from Japan. Assalamu alaikum.
You can see the presentation now?
So could you please show my slide on the screen?
No, we cannot see it, Hanouf.
Okay. We can't? Okay, I will repeat it again. Sweet, please.
Wa alaikum assalam, Horie from Japan, the very active member of the NGO Stakeholder. Welcome.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Khawla. Yes.
What about now?
Very much. Yeah.
Appear
I think
now?
you can see.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
my presentation on the impacts of the pandemic on the groups and AR response to COVID-19 for PWDs, persons with disabilities in Japan. Next, please. Next slide, please. AR Japan is an international NGO that reaches out to the most vulnerable populations around the globe, and we are guided by the principles of neutrality and impartiality. Next, please. And they all mainly focus on emergency response and support for persons with disabilities, landmark action, and water and sanitation, and so on. Next, please. Today, I will talk about AR response to pandemic in Japan. Since last April, we have been conducting support for persons with disabilities affected by COVID-19. And the pandemic was declared last March, and WHO has published the papers, the disability considerations during the COVID-19 outbreak on last March too. And it pointed out that persons with disabilities were more susceptible to the effects of COVID-19 and called for additional considerations for them. Next, please. Next, please. Okay. 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 Impacts of the COVID-19 to PWDs, persons with disabilities. Some PWDs have respiratory diseases, kidney diseases, diabetes, incurable diseases, and require medical care and support. If these people are infected with COVID-19, there's a very high risk that their lives may be in danger. In addition, since residential facilities and welfare facilities, such as group homes, the places where they live in groups. So measures to prevent infection within the facilities are extremely important. And however, the public support was very, very limited to these facilities. Next, please. And this is an example that shows the risk of dialysis patients. As you can see, the percentage of deaths of dialysis patients among infected is 9 times higher than that of among the total number of infected in Japan. So they are very high risk groups. Next, please. And in these situations, what AR Japan has done is to briefly explain that AR activities so far. We have 2 main activities. First is the distribution of infection control supplies like masks, disinfectant solutions that were in short supply in the market. And the second is the improvement of IT infrastructure for organizations for PWDs. And we did this activity to all areas of Japan. Next, please. And this is a photo of distribution of masks to kidney disease patients. Many kidney disease patients have diabetes, which is a factor in the aggravation of COVID-19, and many of them are elderly, and they need to go to hospitals about 3 times a week for dialysis treatment, so they desperately needed masks. Next, please. And this is another photo of the distribution of infection prevention supplies to welfare facilities for PWDs. In order to prevent cluster infection in welfare facilities for PWDs, they are delivered in disinfectant solutions, rubber gloves, non-contact thermometers, and protective clothing. All were in short supply in the market. Next, please. And this is a photo of provision of information and communication equipment to organizations for PWDs. We have provided a web conference camera to the organizations. Next, please. And what we have done today was we supported 2,771 organizations and delivered supplies to about 161,000 people. Next, please. And the future activities, since our support funds tend to flow to the medical fields and support for the people in poverty, and the persons with disabilities are often left behind. So AL Japan will continue to support them in order to protect their lives and the places of their daily living. Thank you. That's all. That's all my presentation. Thank you very much.
Much, Jorge, and I have my question for you, which is, I am struck by the fact that I think of Japan as a very, very wealthy and very industrialized society. I am really surprised that your government was not stepping in to do this kind of work for the people with disabilities. Can you comment on your role as an NGO in this situation?
Can someone unmute Jorge, please?
Okay, okay, I can. Can you hear? Okay. Oh, thank you, Carolyn. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes. Sorry, that yes, that I think that Japanese government assistance to the person with disabilities are very, very limited, and so that many helps support that depends on NGOs. So I know that Japan is a kind of that, yeah, advanced countries, but at the same time there are many, yeah, in the pandemic situations there are so many, yeah, people who need support, so that main supports are allocated to that people, and always a person with disabilities are left behind. So also we are very making advocacy for government, and it's changing gradually, but it still needs more support. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lubna, do you have any question from the chat? seem there's no question from the chat.
No questions from the chat.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So Hanouf, we turn it to you.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Mr. Hori. Now with the fourth speaker is Dr. Khawla. Now you're back for the mic with you now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So my presentation is about the pandemic implications on the environment. So I'm not representing Bahrain and I'm not representing my NGO. This presentation is actually a summary of a paper that I published this year, and it's about the pandemic implications on the environment. $2.5 trillion is what is expected to be needed in order to cope with the damage. And you can expect that with that, there is a huge loss of jobs. According to ILO, 25 million people around the world have lost their jobs, and 81% have their jobs impacted one way or another. So this is almost everyone. If you look at the economy, you can see clearly from all what happened that the linear economy has fallen. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed businesses and societies to the shortfalls of the normal patterns of production, consumption, and their long-lasting impact to supply chain. So you would expect that the whole world would want to change to a sustainable business, to a circular economy. Yet you can see that the initiative, the policies to get us out of the situation, it's still protecting business as usual, sidelining waste management and resource concern, and creating even more challenges for the environment. But if you look at the principles of circular economy and sustainable economy, you can see that it can mitigate the overconsumption of raw materials and overproduction of waste. And you can see that there is a growing small groups who are going in this direction, but more important, there are conversations happening all over the world, mainly amongst NGOs, about the post-COVID reprogramming of linear economy towards a more circular one, where entrepreneur can play a vital role. From my study that I made, and I was comparing what has been published in 2020 and 2021, about the impact of COVID-19. So when you look at the first glance, the whole world was cheering actually and thinking that COVID-19 was good for the environment. So some pollutants, the emissions have got better. There is a decrease in air pollutants like the NOxes and the SOxes. Yes, there is a change, but is it permanent? Or was it just temporarily? And there is a reduction in greenhouse gases globally, but is that permanent? If you look at the positive externalities, huge decrease in air emission for some pollutants, improving in vision, like people from India would confirm this, that some places were seen for the first time by bare eyes. People from Saudi Arabia, Hanouf, can confirm that they were able to see Bahrain from over the bridge, from over the sea for the first time, because simply the 2 million cars that used to cross the bridge from Saudi to Bahrain every year have stopped. Other layer, maybe. We have recorded in the Arabian Gulf and in the Indo-Pacific region, more nesting of turtles, more nesting of birds, good for the environment. People have seen wildlife in many places that has not been seen before. Greener economy is discussed, more awareness about food security and agriculture for food, more vocal conversation about the shift to circular economy, less travel, and more digitization or virtualization. But there is a conflicting phenomena. So on this picture, you can see Bahrain, and this is Bahrain from the side of Saudi Arabia, for the first time by bare eyes. People in the Kathmandu Valley have seen the Mount Everest for the first time. Field researchers. Can you hear me, by the way? Is my voice okay? I just got a message that my voice is not heard.
No, Khawla, we can hear you, but your slides are not being shown. Hanouf is having difficulty. She cannot advance your slides for some reason.
I am advancing it myself.
Oh,
You
well,
cannot see it.
they're not advancing. It's just the presentation slide, nothing else. Just the title slide. Nothing else is on our
Can you
screen.
see it? Okay, I'll stop. Thank you. Thank you. I'll stop the sharing. And I'll go for a new share now. Can you see it now?
Caroline,
can you see the new slides?
We see the title, but can you advance it to the next slide?
All right, I'll stop sharing. I'll share again.
You need to use the arrows down. Okay, that's a different one.
Hanouf, can you see it now?
Yes, we can see it now.
So Khawla, maybe if you go to the picture of you mentioned there was a picture of clear view across, to Bahrain from Saudi Arabia. Maybe you could show that and then pick it from there.
Dr. Khawla, we cannot hear you now.
Hanouf, could you please show the slides? I just moved to a second computer.
Okay.
I had a technical issue on the first one.
Oh, okay. You can see now the presentation.
Technical issues in Bahrain today.
Dr. Khawla, you can see the presentation now?
We just see the presentation. Your screen list. You need to open Khawla's presentation.
What about now?
Hanouf, why don't you move to another presenter while I fix my issue? Please move to the next presenter.
Okay, but I have your presentation, Dr. Khawla.
I cannot see the presentation.
I will repeat it again. Just wait a few seconds. Now, what about now?
Yes, perfect. Can you please advance it?
Okay.
One more.
Here?
Yeah, so this was a slide when I was saying that the world does not want to hear or to see or to understand that the business as usual is not the solution. Move, please, Hanouf. More. Yeah, that's perfect. So if we look at the other side, the environmental impacts, like, okay, we have seen some positive impacts. The whole world have recorded it. But did we know that the global plastic packaging have moved from 909 billion in 2019 US dollar into 1,012.6 billion in 2021. Very good news for the business. 5.5 growth, but what does this mean? It means more plastic waste. After all the effort the whole world was doing in fighting the plastic pollution and the plastic bags and moving to a world without plastic. Next, please. Protected areas. Well, protected areas need protection. If we don't have enough attention, enough budget, then wildlife crimes are likely to increase. with less surveillance, with less financial support. Actually, the activities to conserve ecosystem and biodiversity have been restricted. Furthermore, less conservation staff are available. So even if there are more nesting birds, more nesting turtles, we don't have enough people to record that. Next, please. Next, please. And next. Right. So this is a list of the main negative impacts that I found. There is a huge increase in waste, especially plastic, weakening previous environmental advancement with plastic pollution, weakening existing environmental policies and implementation, increase in chemical pollution, especially medical waste and new type of medical waste, weakening existing waste management processes, delaying decisions and global conservation agreement. We have seen this in UNEP. Halting research and conservational opportunities, decrease in protection and monitoring, loss of continuity of campaigns like Stop Plastic Pollution. Actually, we're asked to use plastic. We're asked to use it just one time and throw it away. Huge increase in virtualization, but it has its impact, not just on health, but on the environment. We have huge digital waste. More packaging, loss of agricultural products due to disrupted transport and supply chains, especially at the beginning. Next, please. The pandemic could result in monthly global consumption and waste of 129 million face masks. Can you believe it? 129 billion face masks and 65 billion gloves. And can you guess where all of this will go to? I think the plastic ocean and the other amazing films have taught us where all of this will go to. Next, please. Right, so next, that would be the last one. Okay, so I couldn't show you my real presentation, but there are, and this is the last one, there are recording of birds that are entangled in the masks. So it's not just plastic in the ocean and all what we know about the microplastic and polluting the ocean and the food chain and all of this. But you know, the lining of the masks have managed to entangle the legs, the beaks of birds and kill them slowly. It did the same with crabs. We've seen pictures and records of monkeys dealing with the masks. The masks are made of plastic, and the instruction is use it once and throw it away. We are asked to use plastic gloves. We are asked to package and double package. And for safety, we have to use plastic stuff at restaurants. We are ordering food from home and it's coming to us in packaging, and all of this goes as waste. So in conclusion, all the procedures and instructions that we have received as people from all over the world about how to deal with the pandemic, it did not have the environment at all as a priority, not even as a respective factor of how we should be careful not to harm the environment. Environment has never been priority in any decision, and in this pandemic, it suffered even more than what we think. That was my first published papers. I'm writing now the second one. The situation is even worse than what we knew. Thank you very much for your attention. And I hope that you will be careful in dealing with the environment in your everyday life actions.
Thank you very much, Khawla. And I guess I'd say if we could move directly to the next two speakers, and then we can open the discussion up for the general discussion at the end of the program. That would probably be our best use of time.
I think that's perfect. Okay. So Hanouf, it's yours.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Dr. Khawla and Dr. Carolyn. Now with the fifth speaker is just wait, please.
I think Pedro, he is here and I believe ready to go.
Hello there. Can you hear me well?
There's the fifth speaker from India.
No, Pedro is here, Hanouf. So Pedro,
Okay.
can we have his presentation? Pedro, would you please use these few seconds and show us the map of the people attending while Hanouf is preparing the presentation?
She have to allow me to share the screen. Maybe I can do in the end. By the end of the presentation, I can share the map, but I need to be allowed.
Okay, your presentation is there, so go ahead, please.
And Hanouf, can you enlarge your screen by clicking on slideshow so we can see the presentation in larger form?
Okay, but this slide, it's as a PDF. That's why it's a small one.
Okay.
So first to introduce myself, I'm Pedro Cunha. I'm from Brazil. I'm 31 years. I used to work with youth for all the last decade. And nowadays I work at civil society stakeholders engagement at all. I'm from Las Hemos. Las Hemos is a platform from Latin America and the Caribbean. Las Hemos is the acronym of Latin America and the Caribbean Engagement Mechanism. Our main purpose is to work on info management and to promote participation into decision-making agendas and agendas implementations. So my first slide, as you can see, we can understand that the virus like COVID make no distinction between those who they affect. So in theory, they cause the same disease in the rich and in the poor, but in practice, the pandemic has widened that the gulf between vulnerable groups and other populations all over the world. So next slide, please. People, at the beginning, there was some talk that the crisis would affect everyone, and it was like something that we will all see and react the same way. But as also was presented, the pandemic sometimes showed us how we still think in the old state of mind of understanding the economy, understanding the resources, understanding the way to deal with with problems. And so next slide, please. People who were marginalized before now appeared, and something that I will also say lately, most of the ones that we haven't even heard are mainly because they do not have internet. So nowadays, the moment that we are living, you probably have seen in different Zoom meetings and in different ways, the low and bad connectivity from people, especially from that vulnerable places, and how the connectivity were important to promote the assistances, to promote the spread of the word. So next slide, please. So in Brazil, now I will say a bit more about Brazil. We understood that, especially regarding vulnerable groups, their needs to be institutionalized as rights, because most of what we faced regarding COVID and this process after it were the depression of human rights. We faced a moment in the humanity again that the human rights were treated by different circumstances. And something to say, for example, as in Palestine were presented about the density of the population and not being able to make social distancing. Had a study that was just launched this week here in Brazil, especially in Rio de Janeiro, saying that the people from the slums were not able to do social distancing. So social distancing in some way were possible for rich people. And when we see people saying doing quarantine, we haven't seen workers with the public transport full of them with a big density inside the bus. Completely unbelievable that in this circumstance that we are living, we will still face things as that. And the state of mind is, what is worse, to get the COVID or to lose your job and then to have be hungry and have their family hungry? So the COVID was an opportunity to show humanity, but in fact we have seen some bad things. So next slide, please. In Brazil, especially, the public policies and I'm not going politically here inside this presentation. It's not my proposal to go politically, but to see some way how the vulnerable populations in Brazil were dealing with that. And the indigenous in Brazil, they entered with a process in the International Criminal Court with crimes against humanity, because the policies and the assistance that Brazil gave to indigenous were like an understanding of a promotion of a genocide. And something that we also faced, especially these indigenous peoples in Brazil, is that as the same way that the poor people were not able to do social distancing, the land grabbers, the people who make deforestation, the environmental impacts that were historically in Brazil comes worse in the COVID. So the people, Carolyn say also about mining, and here in Brazil, it got worse during in the pandemic, but not the legal workers, but also the criminals. Here, this is something that we said here a lot in Brazil. The criminals didn't done quarantine. They didn't do social distance. They used that opportunity to go beyond with their interests. And also Environment Ministry in Brazil, in an interview, he said by these words that at this moment that the media is taking a lot of attention of COVID, it's the time to pass a lot of environmental retrocess into the court. So they make it legal. It's completely unbelievable, but the ones more that we can see more that live in the worst scenario here in Brazil were the indigenous. So next slide, please. We can see some lessons learned, and sometimes not to what to do, but to not what to not do. So next slide, please. One of them is communication. We saw, next slide, please. We saw the meaning and the importance of communication. Here in Brazil, we again face a different scenario. I know there is not the common in the world, but we have a negationist. We have people that until now in Brazil do not believe on COVID, do not believe that COVID is a treat, that you have to do social distancing and you have to take care. So communication have a crucial role, but in Brazil, the fake news also got a decisive circumstance to the collapse that we live in. I put it here in a big word, the access, because the access of information is something that you see in the second comment, the poor internet connection, and also the opportunity to dialogue with the world, the vulnerable places. For example, the indigenous, they have their own languages. You find information, they can find information in Portuguese, but then full of fake news, and then they are not in touch with the world, with what is happening in English. So we can see connectivity and language as two great barriers from Brazil, from Latin America, from the global south, the places that do not speak English, to follow the informations and to go beyond narratives of fake news, because that were what happened in Brazil. About coordination, we also see a lack of coordination, and that Rafael also said about the government interventions that were not useful, but the things that we see people going for themselves in a neighborhood, in a community initiatives, but regarding, for example, to NGOs, NGOs have that expertise to coordinate actions, to coordinate assistance, and in Brazil, most of that were done by people that had to do something for their community. They were not able to wait the government, they were not able to wait the NGOs, but then most of that assistances and initiatives were very punctual. They do not have so much follow-ups, they do not have integration, they didn't change the reality of social textile, I don't know how to say in English, the social network in the territory. It becomes very punctual, but do not bring us networks. And in the end, a worst thing that we can see, as I said, we had the opportunity to show humanity, but we have seen the worst of humankind sometimes. And this regards about corruption. Many of the buyings, the government buyings were done at emergency needs. So most of them do not go on the process of buying that legally goes with different options. They just go for some options, and then full of corruptions. We have the Secretary of Health of Rio de Janeiro arrested. He's in prison now. And going to the end, this is my last slide to say that in the beginning, most of you all have heard about wash your hands, but then we see that the problem is much bigger. Washing your hands in the places that that were not vulnerable, sometimes it's in a long time habit, but at vulnerable places that sometimes they do not even have clear water to wash their hands, it becomes some way a habitat that we should have to develop. But the thing that I would like to bring here is about COVID were not planned. We will not be able to plan COVID, and we give the wrong responses. But we are also facing climate change collapse. We are climate crisis, and we are also facing the biodiversity extinction. So we could plan and act more, because we have been advised for decades that the climate, that the biodiversity will not have a step back if we didn't change our way to respond to problems. So thank you so much, and very grateful.
Well, thank you, Pedro. And I think we will move to last but not least, Reshma from India. We look forward to hear from there about the vulnerable groups and how they're coping with COVID-19. So, Hanouf, I hand it to you.
Yes, okay. The sixth speaker, what Dr. Khawla said, Ms. Reshma. Did you see the presentation?
No, but can you hear me? This is Reshma.
Yeah, we hear you now. But what about the presentation?
Yeah, can I play it on my screen and share my screen?
Hanouf, we cannot see it, dear. Can you please start it? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. What about now?
Yes, perfect. If you can enlarge it, thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me, Hanouf?
Yes, I hear you now.
Okay, great. I don't need to turn my video on, right?
No, just go ahead. Go ahead, Reshma.
Okay, great. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to present what we are doing in India with respect to COVID impacts on vulnerable population and vulnerable groups. JAPE Foundation is a very new foundation. It's only 2 years old. So our work is just literally a small drop in the ocean, but there are tens of thousands of NGOs doing amazing work in India since March of 2020, and the work continues at all levels. Of course, the government, it caught the government agencies off guard, so they were not ready. They were not expecting the extent and the size of the impact, but the NGOs were the first to get on the ground and start their work to combat and to mitigate the impact of COVID-19. A little bit about JAPE. JAPE primarily focuses on education, empowerment, and environment issues in rural and tribal area of India. But since March 2020, we also it added our focus area of COVID-19 relief work. Under COVID-19 relief work, if you can go to the next slide, please. Under COVID-19 relief work, we primarily focused on food distribution, distribution of masks and sanitizers, and also making smartphones available to certain poor rural areas. Again, as I said, this was just a drop in the ocean with what we are doing, but there are other NGOs that are doing this work at a much, much larger scale. And without the NGOs' work, the impact of the COVID in India would have been 1,000 times bigger, if not more. This was just a glimpse to share with all of you. Next slide, please. Here, what I'm doing is, this is not just about what JAPE's work is, but through our observations and through our research, these are just highlights to show how the impact on education has been and continues to be in India. Basically, in India, the access to digital devices, internet, computers is still pretty rare. If you will be surprised to hear the numbers that the latest survey among all over India, school-going students, has been the access to internet and smartphones has been listed at between 4 to 6%. Only 4 to 6% students currently have access to smartphones or internet through some other device. So basically, everybody else is left at the mercy of some other form of learning, while the schools continue to remain closed for the past 20 months almost. Another survey has shown that the learning for these rural tribal area school kids and also poor area kids has gone back by as much as 4 years. So they've lost now 4 years worth of learning, and even 4th and 5th and 6th grade students are unable to read or write in many areas of India. So that was a very unfortunate survey, and hopefully a lot more efforts are put in there by the government and other NGOs going forward. Another big impact on school kids, it's not just on the learning, but also close to 116 million children in India also were enrolled to receive midday meals. So most of them used to go to school to get their meals. And if some learning happened on the side, that would be a bonus. So because of the school closures for the first few months until the government agencies and school administrations were able to figure out how to get these meals to the students, for many months they had no access to these midday meals, which has direct impact on their health naturally. Later on, the schools have figured out how to get at least the groceries, if not actually cooked meals. So even as of today, dry groceries are being distributed to these kids who were subscribed or enrolled into this midday meal program. So I believe these groceries are distributed maybe twice a month, which are then given to their family members. So hopefully it reaches the kids, but again, that's not guaranteed when you have family of 7 or 8. So kids could be the last to receive, especially girl children. And the very last point here on this slide is about 30 million children between 3 to 6 years were also benefited by these integrated child development centers, which is like a daycare, early childhood care program that they were enrolled in. So of course, with the school closures and these centers still remain closed, so these kids between 3 to 6 years are completely missing out on this care. That has also impacted the mothers who couldn't go out to either work, or if they had to go out to work, then the kids were perhaps left home unattended. And all of these will come out probably in few years to see how many generations will be impacted by this lack of care at these early ages of the kids. Next slide, please. This table just primarily shows, again, the very stark digital divide between urban and rural areas of India. And you can see the numbers for yourself, how if the numbers are at single digit or double digit, then much lower, because even in the family, if one smartphone is available, first it will go to a father or mother, then a male child, and then a female child, if at all available, the time is available or data plan is available. Next slide, please. Here again, continued impact on education is, of course, that even though the government is now working on how to restart or reopen the schools, there's a huge shortage of qualified teachers. What happened when the schools finally came around and decided that, okay, we cannot remain closed forever, but at least we should start offering online teaching. A very small percentage of teachers were trained to even use technology or teach online or get used to how to do all of these things, and then that's one side of it. Second side, of course, lack of access to technology, lack of access to internet. So that's also a big factor. But the teachers themselves are not equipped, and they just don't seem to have that capacity. So those percentages are still ranging between 10% to 25%, 10% being in government schools and 25% in private schools, where the teachers seem to know or seem to have professional qualifications and to handle the online teaching. Those are also very troubling numbers. And lastly, I want to also say that earlier Pedro, I think, mentioned that many places don't even have wash facilities, right? So if you are supposed to reopen the schools, but if you don't have wash facilities, such as even drinking water, functional toilets, or even hand wash facility, then even if you reopen the schools just to continue the learning, that will create additional risk for these kids who are first unvaccinated, and second, this new variant seem to impact the kids in a much stronger way than adults. This will only create a much higher risk for the kids if the schools reopen at this time. Next slide, please. This slide particularly highlights the impacts on girls, transgender children, and women. Some surveys here in India are showing with evidence that just the school closures alone will result in additional 1 million more girls and transgender children dropping out of school before they complete their education. And this is because once the school closures happen, these kids already did not had much more struggle to get family to support them to go out, because again, transgender is still looked at as a big taboo, not much support in the family or the society. So, I'm sorry, I can hear some background noise. Can you please mute whoever that is?
Rishma, actually, you got to end in a few seconds. We're running really late. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, so now we lost the speaker's voice. Caroline, I think we're running out of time, so I would suggest that we open the discussion for everyone, and we will skip the speakers' comments. They can comment after the discussion. But before that, I would give Mary, our young ambassador, maximum of 1 minute. Mary, can someone unmute Mary, please?
Thank you so much. So the poll is still going on. We have 2 polls. The first poll, we can say that there's a link that I've provided, and the code to use, if you can't access the link, use the link www.menti.com and the code 6610-4836. Please keep the votes coming. Almost half of you are, we have a total participants of 42. Please keep the votes coming. I'm monitoring them. And the second poll is still open. Please cast your vote. We need to showcase the results at the end of this event. So yeah, if you haven't done that, please vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. That was extremely well and precise. So we will give the chance to 3 of the speakers who have, 3 of the participants who have asked us the floor, but I will ask them to be very short. So I would start with the youngest one amongst us, Afnan. Please make it short. Afnan, and then to be followed by Dr. Khalid Abu Ali, and then Mr. Rashid. So, okay, I can see Mr. Rashid. I am unmuting you. Mr. Rashid, please, the floor is yours. Afnan, get ready, please.
Hello, my name's hello.
We can hear you. Go ahead, please. You have 1 minute maximum.
My name's Rashid Mohammedis, and I'm very glad to attend this Zoom meeting. Among many other meetings, this one is a bit unique because due to access to digital service, let me say straight away, internet service, easy to attend such kind of meetings. I represent an organization by the name Ireland's Action Forum, and it really works with the indigenous community and specifically the pastoralist community. The pastoralist communities are communities that drive their economic livelihood from livestock, and they entirely depend around 98%.
Mr. Rashid, we cannot hear you. Mr. Rashid.
Hanouf, if you could unmute Mr. Rashid, and we'll come back to him.
Okay.
Of northern Kenya, and the way I would like to speak to the agenda.
Okay, so I will move to Dr. Khalid Abu Ali, and please, you have 1 minute. Mr. Rashid will come back to you when your internet is better. You're representing very important, vulnerable community, so we will come back to you. Dr. Khalid Abu Ali.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk at this global NGO discussion. I would like to highlight the following points on the restrictions on movement in Palestine. Restricting movement is one of the main tools that Israel employs to impose its regime of occupation over the Palestinian population in the occupied territories. Israel restricts the movement of Palestinians within the occupied territories between the West Bank and Gaza Strip into Israel and abroad. Only Palestinians are restricted in this manner, while settlers and other civilians are free to travel. As you know, in March and April 2020, while much of the world was adjusting to a new normal of lockdowns and curfews, many Palestinians experienced a recovery of familiar circumstances when the first few COVID-19 cases in the West Bank were identified near Bethlehem. Moreover, Jordan closed the King Hussein border crossing, the main entry and exit point for the West Bank Palestinians. So in addition to the restrictions of movement due to COVID-19, we are still living under military tight closure. Can you imagine that over 700 road obstacles control Palestinian movement within the West Bank, including the military, permanent and flying checkpoints between the villages and towns? And all of these measures, of course, affected all aspects of our life. The travel and movement within the West Bank and even to Jerusalem during the COVID-19 is considered the worst period of movement restrictions under Israeli occupation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khalid. Afnan, can someone unmute Afnan, please? She represents the children who are attending today with us, and we're very proud of having this young generation with us. So, Afnan.
السلام عليكم. مرحبا، أنا أفنان داوود، عمري 18 سنة، من الأردن عمان، أصلي فلسطيني وجنسيتي أردنية، عضو من أعضاء برنامج ريم لقادة البيئة الصغار، وسفيرة برنامج ريم في الأردن، وآدمن لصفحة من صفحات برنامج ريم الرسمية على الانستغرام. إحنا برنامج ريم عملنا مشاريع كتيرة بتخص البيئة، منها كوبي معي، بيدي أزرع، إعادة تدوير الكمامات. طبعا بالوقت الأخير صارت جائحة عالمية بكل بلاد العالم اللي هي كورونا، فكان أثارها على البيئة وعلى الإنسان وعلى الطبيعة كبير جدا، ففكرنا كيف نقدر نقلل من خطرها على البيئة. فحكينا الخطر الوحيد اللي من الأخطار اللي حطتها على البيئة اللي هي الكمامات. طبعا هي مش خطر الوحيد. راح أعرض لكم شوية صور بتمثل بتبين فيها أثار الكمامات كانت بالبحار والمحيطات على الحيوانات.
أفنان ما راح تقدرين تعرضين، فبس خبرينا أنتوا إيش سويتوا باختصار عشان نقدر نترجمه.
تمام. أول إشي سوينا طبعا المعلومة لازم تعرفون إن الكمامات اللي أعادنا تدويرها هي كماماتنا الشخصية، مش كمامات حدا تاني. حكينا إنه بكون لو عليها خطر بكون أقل. أول إشي عملناه طبعا عقمنا الكمامات. كيف؟ أول خطوة هي تعقيم الكمامات بيكون من خلال أشعة الشمس، هي الجفاف. خليناها بالشمس لمدة 72 ساعة على أسبوع، وطبعا بعد ما هيك طبعا بتكون تعقمت خلال أشعة الشمس. بعدين كنا لابسين جلافز وإحنا بنعقم فيها. طبعا بعد مرور 72 ساعة من الأسبوع مسكناها وقعدنا تدويرها. ورود قدر الصناعية بتكون. طبعا هيك إحنا بنكون خففنا أثرها على البيئة، وبنكون كمان عطيناها منظر جميل واستخدمناها بشكل آخر كمان.
ممتاز ممتاز، شكرا لك يا أفنان عشان أقدر أترجم اللي قلتيه. تمام، شكرا.
العفو.
So Afnan said about children contribution during the COVID-19. She is a Palestinian who lives in Jordan. What they did is when they learned about the masks and what they do of harm to the environment, she and her colleagues in the REAM program for Little Environmentalists took their own masks. They did not throw them away. They washed them, they dried them under the sun, and then they turned them into hair clips, into flowers that they use at home. And she said, maybe this is not too much, but this is our little contribution, because we don't want the environment to be polluted by something we are forced to use every day and forced to throw away. So I would say, congratulations, Afnan. You have done something that adults did not do. So this is amazing to hear. Rashid, I'm going to give you another chance to speak. So maybe Hanouf can help in this. So we'd like to listen to Rashid because he represents the pastoralists in Kenya, those people who live in the deserts and facing droughts at the time of Corona, and they are definitely vulnerable groups, and we want to know how they coped with that. Hanouf?
Yes, okay. Just tell me if you hear now.
Okay.
Okay, what about now? You hear?
No.
No? Okay.
Okay. We'll try opening the microphone of Rashid again. So Rashid, please try again, and I hope that we can hear you this time. Your microphone is open.
Okay, what about now?
Lands Action
Yes,
Forum,
perfect.
an organization based in northern Kenya region. Thank you, and I want to share briefly the impact of COVID-19 on pastoralist community. Just to tell you, pastoralists are communities that mainly rely on livestock for livelihood, and therefore immediately after the pandemic of COVID-19, the initiative of putting in place measures to stop COVID-19 had also impacted on our way of life, especially how we do our livestock trade, because in a bid to stop the spread of COVID-19, for example, the closure of formal livestock market was imposed, and this really affected the buying and selling of our livestock, including the camels, the goats, the sheep. And this to the pastoralist community is where they get their income. Basically, the household income of pastoralist communities emanates from livestock keeping. So you can imagine the impact it had on them, especially on their daily life and how they progress in terms of economic empowerment. Especially women play a very key role in our livestock economy, because the sale of livestock product, especially milk, is an income generating for our livestock farmers. And this particular product, women play a key role in the sale of this product. So different populations of course were affected, and you can imagine from here how the different segments of our pastoralist communities were affected, including women, and of course again their children also come in here. Livestock, as I said, play a very significant role in terms of improving the economic status of our society. Thank you all, and that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you very much, Rashid, and thank you, Hanouf, for the technical great help. Caroline, I hand the microphone to you because we are past time and you're the timekeeper. So the microphone is yours, Caroline.
Well, first, thank you, Rashid, for sticking with us and being able to get your message of the pastoralist situation in Kenya out to this much larger global audience. Really appreciate you and everyone sticking with us through all the technical issues to make this global discussion happen. We will be doing our best to share this whole presentation in a way that people can access. Khawla and I will discuss it before she and I end today. But I wanted to say, I guess the main thing I've gotten from all these presentations is the impact of COVID-19 having magnified the problems for the vulnerable groups. And I am wondering, struggling within my own mind, just how we can all best work to deal with this situation. I'll put that out as a question, a thought question for all of us. And in the interest of time, we should probably turn it back to Khawla for the closing comments.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for the amazing co-facilitation of this amazing and outstanding dialogue. Actually, when I look at it and I remember what has been said in this dialogue, I think many voices who have not been heard in such a conference are heard for the first time. I'm so happy to hear them, although most of them are very painful. And I think I won't sleep tonight thinking of how can we help? How can we make things better? But then that was the idea. I just want to remind us all that the reason why we came out with the idea of having this dialogue is for us as the NGOs, the conscious of the world, people who care about social responsibility, who care about others, about human rights. We want to understand, we want to know, because we don't know it all. No one knows it all. It's only those people who are living it. They know how it is. How does it feel? What are the implications? And how other people can help them, how other NGOs can help. So I'm really very much grateful for every speaker who have shared part of their daily suffering, their daily agony in this difficult time. Everyone is having their share, but vulnerable groups, people and other living beings in our shared environments are suffering the most, and we need to know it. We need to do something about it. I'm so glad that Afnan, our dearest Afnan, have given us hope by telling us how children have found an opportunity to make a difference, and they went and they did it. This is amazing. This is an inspiration for all of us. And as Caroline said, it doesn't end in here. We will share this dialogue with you all. And there's nothing stopping us from making another event, maybe a bigger event, where we can hear and discuss it more. I know you have many questions. I have many questions for the panelists, but we promised you to end at 5:30, and it's now almost 5:50. So at this point, I'd like to thank you all for attending, and on behalf of the Environment Friend Society and the NGO stakeholder of the Stakeholder Global Network of ISO 26000, I'd like to thank and present certificates to all those who have made this a success. So our dear Hanouf, which is one of those people who have made this a success, is presenting the certificates. I just wanted you to have a look at it. You will receive it by email. So the first certificate goes to my co-facilitator, the amazing Caroline, and certificates go to each one of the amazing panelists who came from Palestine, from India, from Kenya, from Brazil in this difficult time, from Japan, and then the other amazing people who have been helping me in technically managing this meeting, and before it and after it, and the social media. Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Sandeep, the vice ambassador of the NGO Stakeholder and the young ambassador. And thank you, Pedro, for the help. Dr. Lubna, Dina, Hanouf, Saliha, Aisha, Moza, all the amazing people who have been helping in the process. You will all receive your certificates, and this is just a reminder of this amazing dialogue. Do you know why? Do you know why I'm giving you a reminder? Because we're going to plan another one. So when you look at it, you just think of the coming events. Through it and by it, we discover more and more. How are people living? How are other beings are living? And how can we be better human beings? How can we care more? How can we look around us and be responsible for every action that we do? Afnan tried to be responsible for the action of having a mask. Are we responsible for whatever we buy? Are we responsible consumers? Do we know how it was made? Do we know if people were enslaved in the process of making it? Do we know if environments have been destroyed or making it? Is it necessary? Do we really cannot live without it? Is everything we use it because we really need it? Or do we use it just because we can and we can afford it? Do we think of the consequences of our decisions, of our actions, and even of our words? Because sometimes words have more consequences than anything else. I'm so happy that I hear the voice of Palestine today, strong and loud. And I would say, keep it up. You taught us today about resilience, about persistence, and about resourcefulness. I think, yes, all of us has to be resourceful. All of us have to use everything that we can use to make life a better place, not just for us, not just for our direct family, not just for our direct community that we as NGOs are saying that we represent them, but the whole world, everything, every human being, every other living being in our shared environment. With these words, I would like to thank you all for being with us today. And I would like to invite you for our next event. Soon you will be invited and soon you will see it. Hanouf would like to take us in a map to show us from where do we come. So we want to know what are the countries that are with us tonight. And I can see dots almost all over the world. Thank you very much, especially for those that is the time for them now is very inconvenient, but they still stay with us midnight or early morning. We are from all over the world, which means that we have more responsibility. Thank you very much, everyone. Please make sure to leave us your email, your contact number in the chat. We will take it later on. We'll make sure that you are invited for the next event. So thank you with that. And I know that Mary has answers that she would like to share with us. We'll share them with you by emails. We'll share them with you maybe in the next event because it is more to guide us. Thank you for those who have contributed. Mary is saying that it's still open, so please write in it if you did not. Thank you for those who are sharing their emails now. Please, I encourage everybody to share your email, share your contact. And if you want to be with us in the NGO stakeholder of the ISO 26000 stakeholder global network, then we welcome you. Just leave us your email, your number, and we will contact you. With these words, I would like to thank you, but I will ask all the organizers to just say one word before we close while other people are writing their emails. So Dina, Hanouf, Lubna, Saliha, Pedro, all of you, you can say just one quick word, just one. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for all your presentation. It's amazing, and thank you for all NGO. My name is Hanouf Al-Amer. I am technical support for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanouf. Dina, Lubna, Saliha.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Khawla, for this amazing idea for bringing people together. And
we can't hear you, Lubna.
Oh. Sorry. Is it better now?
Yes, excellent.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to thank you, Dr. Khawla, for this amazing idea to bring people together. And the most important, we're here all for this dialogue, for a better world for everybody. Hopefully, we will get together and make this world a better place to live in and leave no one behind. Thank you.
Inshallah, including your granddaughter that we just heard her voice. Thank you, Dr. Lubna.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lubna, Saliha.
Thank you so much, Khawla, for this amazing for everything. It is really amazing for me, and it's very important for this world. And thank you for giving me this chance to be part of this amazing job.
You've done a great job. Dina is the one who prepared the certificate, guys, that you're going to receive. She prepared every single one of them. So thank you, Dina, for that.
Thank you, dear.
Saliha, we want to hear your voice. Okay, Mary, our young ambassador. Okay, guys, so I think I've given you enough time. So for all of you to just put your emails and your contact. So with that, I wish you all peace. We say in Bahrain, salam, which means peace. I hope that each one of you will carry the peace with them. Peace for you, peace for the people around you. And when we talk about vulnerable groups in other countries, please just look close. Look at the vulnerable groups in your country, in your community. Maybe you don't see them because you've been used to treating them like they are less, they're not equal, they don't have rights, and it's easy to fall there. It's easy to see the injustice when it happens far away, but it's really difficult to see it when it happens in your own home. So my last word to all of us is look close. Look at the people who are close to you, because really you can make more impact on those people. They will appreciate it, and you will be able to make the world a better place if you did something tonight, today, as soon as you can. Peace to you all, and good night, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Thank you very much for being with us. في أمان الله.
Khawla, please keep the presentation open till I can make sure I've got my recording captured.
Caroline, what did you want me to do?
Just don't close things out until I can make sure I've got the recording captured.
Okay. Okay. All right, so goodbye, everybody.
Okay, I will stop the recording. I will stop my recording and then make sure I can download it. So
we have a recording, so that's fine, Caroline, don't worry. We have it recorded into other computers, so we're fine. We have the chat and everything.
Great.
Is that okay? Great. All right. Okay. Well, good night, everyone from Bahrain, and enjoy. And don't forget what I said. Look close. Look at the vulnerable people next door. Good night. This is Khawla Al-Muhannadi, the president of the Environment Friends Society, the ambassador of the NGO Stakeholder from the ISO 26000 Stakeholder Global Network. We'll see you soon. Goodbye for now.